Welcome to the Grown Folks Table. Pull up a seat and be ready for real women discussing real issues at the table. And now your host, Alicia Cash, Vicki Turner, Dr. Levy, Dolores Grizzle, and Joyce Littell. Welcome to the table. Welcome to the Grown Folks Table. I tell you, I got a smile on my face because this conversation we're about to have now is one that excites me with my sisters here. So I got my first question that I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to throw this out to you. The 5 love languages are words of affirmation, ladies, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. I'm going to start with you, Vicki. Do you know what your love language is?
Okay. Seriously, this is true. I like all of them. I think that I've evolved into this woman. I'm a seasoned woman. I've been with my husband over 45 years. And so our love language, it has evolved. And so all of those are valuable and they make us, it enriches our relationship by touching on all of them. I think that's a safe answer.
Okay.
Pass.
You know, too late to pass. Dolores.
Well, I'm with Vicki. I think pretty much most of them are my love languages as well. We're not going to really just go through them, but yeah, I would say I'm the quality, physical. What was the other one? Was quality, physical, affirmation, definitely affirmation.
Receiving a gift or two.
Yeah. Come on.
No, I want your love. I don't get to have all those gifts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Dolores.
Love me.
Just
love
have
me.
all of them.
I think so.
Let me just say. So I mean, all of them are. I think are relevant and needed when you're in a relationship with someone, but one or two have to be your main language. You know, when someone wants to please you or excite you, one that resonates with you more, and that's just me leading into a love relationship. Intelligence, I know just a smidgen, but for me, affirmation is mine. Affirmation and receiving gifts, and so I think my husband, he knows both of those are mine because he's a poet. He writes poetry and stuff, and he'll say, "Oh, you're so wonderful. You're so kind." At first, I'm like, "No, that's not doing it right now. I need a gift."
So you taught him.
Yes. But he's learned the love languages.
Yeah.
So I think those are my two, affirmation and gifts.
I didn't know.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I am so thankful that I'm in an industry where I get a chance to meet people that taught me this because it wasn't taught. I had no earthly idea that one of these languages actually allowed me to be attracted to my current husband.
With the Quiet Storm.
I know, but I ain't know this. But because I got the Quiet Storm from a voice.
You do. Yes, you do.
Hi, this is Joyce. And honestly, that's how I met my husband. He heard me on the radio, and he called into the radio station. He said some good stuff, and now we've been married 34 years. Well, we've been married 29, but together 34 years. But it wasn't until I started doing a show called Love and Relationships on the radio to where this topic came up. And I was feeling just as dumb and stupid because I did not know this. Yes. And so I would say, honestly, now I'm coming into recognizing what that is. I just thought I had to just make it do what I do to land this man, to land this relationship. So until I started hearing and reading and having these kinds of conversations, I'm like, well, I don't know what my language is, but it's cool that you can learn these things, and then it sort of kind of has a bell in your head like, oh, when he did that,
Because I don't think your relationship or marriage can survive without knowing your love language. Because at some point you're gonna have to, I know we're gonna lean into some expertise, but I just think at some point when you start having troubles in your relationship and your marriage, it drills down to, do you understand each other's love language, or has your love language changed? Because they can change.
They do change.
Yeah.
And I think when you said the relationship cannot survive, and see, I think differently. I think they can, because it's really communication at the top of everything. And as long as they can communicate with each other, then they can learn those languages, and you can work on those languages. One of my favorite, I think, is the one of service.
But you just double dip. What you said. You said, I think they can if they could communicate, and then they can communicate the love language.
Communications in the relationship, period. Because you have people, I would say, my husband and I may not have had all those, the same love languages, however. But we've been on a 40-something year relationship.
No, you don't have to have the same. You don't have to have the same language, but
understanding the language.
But he knows your love language.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He knows my love language. I know his.
Yes.
And I know his. The number one is the service, quality of service.
Yes.
Which I loved about him when I met him, and because I love someone, I was like, my God, how he just outthinks me, how he thinks of all my needs and all my wants. And
Exactly.
he does it.
Yes.
This is a man. Before I can get out of bed, he's gone to the grocery store. He has the grocery. He has the breakfast ready. And
Yes.
when I roll out of bed, it's just time to eat. You know?
You sure you're not talking about Rob?
I'm talking about Rob here.
I tell you what, we got some expert opinion that we can bring into this conversation, and I would like to introduce her. Can I introduce her?
Yes,
First
go
of
ahead.
all, she is a soror. I just want to put that out there
She's
first.
your soror.
She's my soror.
Yes.
But let's give a little background about her. Her name is Dr. Adrian. She is a licensed professional counselor and owner of Change Makers LLC and a Change for All 2 in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Adrian is a psychotherapeutic. Her psychotherapeutic areas of expertise include individual therapy, group therapy, of which we will have today, family therapy, stress management, depression, substance dependency, loss of employment, grief, loss, anger management, life change coach, relationship and communications, premarital counseling, divorce recovery, parenting skills, and the list goes on. Plus, she is a host of a show on 1380 WAOK called Relationship Talk. Ladies, let's welcome Dr. Adrian.
Welcome, Dr.
Thank
Adrian.
you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here for this very rich conversation.
So you've heard some of it, because we
have.
have the question, is the lack of being in tune with our love language prohibiting you from realizing true happiness in your relationships?
It certainly can, because here's the thing. If you can't tell somebody how to love you, then they're going to give to you based on who they are, not based on who you are. So it is not possible for all 5 of the love languages to be equal. You have one. So when you take the assessment, and you can go to 5lovelanguages.com, Gary Chapman, I use this book in my practice with couples all the time, because your love language can change, Pastor E.
Yes.
And so depending on what you have going on in your life, things in your life in terms of your needs and what you are needing from your mate will
Yes.
change, and it will alter. So when I was previously married for 29.5 years, acts of service, and it was 29.5 years. It was not 30. People like to say, well, that's almost 30. Well, no, because I'm going to make 30 with this new one. So, yeah, so 29.5. But, acts of service has been my love language for a very, very long time. But what I was needing changed. That's what changed, because what I was needing was for that joker to be paying some bills, and he was not. So I said, I don't need you to go in there and fix me breakfast. I need you to pay a bill, because that's the act of service that I need.
like acts
So
of
it's not just it's
Yes.
not just knowing what your love language is. It's being able to communicate to the other person what that means for you, because it doesn't mean the same. Acts of service is something different to everybody sitting around
Yes,
this
it
table.
is. Yes, it is.
right.
Physical touch is something different. For some people, people, it's just holding hands.
Right.
For some folk, it's getting a little deeper. So you have to be able to communicate to your spouse what it is that you need or to your partner.
Because it does change. Go ahead.
Yes, I like. I'm very encouraged. Thank you, because I think in the evolution of who I am as a woman, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And those love languages that may have been dominant before, they've taken a back seat to what is prevalent at this point. So I thought it was just me, but I'm glad you just affirmed.
I affirmed.
Like
that
with
for you.
mine in the early stages of our relationship, the quality time piece was not a big deal. In these later stages of our relationship, it has become a big deal. And so now in me saying yes or no to being able to do this or that, I have to now think about, well, it's been 3 weekends I have been hosting or being somewhere, and Jay hadn't been nowhere in a part of that. So now I think about, I know this is something that he desires is the quality time. So I really have to work on that,
Well, my husband's love language is affirmation. So if he cleaned the kitchen, I better come in and say,
You better praise him.
look at these floors.
Yes.
I can't get these floors clean like this.
Yes.
You did such a good job.
That's Jay's too.
But it matters. It matters that you are affirming
It does.
to your partner in
Right.
terms of when they are giving to you, gifting to
Yes.
you
Yes.
based on your love language.
That's
you have
correct.
to affirm that, or
Yep.
it will stop.
You're right, because
Yeah.
that's that act of kindness, and I respond to his love language. Wait, I respond to my love language that he.
What typically happens is you love based on who you are.
Okay.
So if you're someone who loves to get gifts,
Yes.
you tend to give gifts.
Yes.
Right.
And that may not be your partner's love language, which is why it's important to understand from them, well, what
Yes.
is it that you need from me?
That's right.
Because we're going to naturally love based on who we are, not based on who the other person is.
That's correct.
That's good.
So then for someone who's jumping into relationships and they are viewing, this conversation, then what do you say to them who are just moving or getting into a relationship? How do you jump off in that kind of conversation? Baby, what's your love language?
Well,
how
you
do
know
you
what?
say those things?
Actually, it needs to be a conversation that's had right there with non-negotiables. And so when you are a certain age, you don't wait 6 months to a year when everybody is sending their representative. You got to have some conversations on the front end. You got to be grown enough to be real. And so a lot of times the reason we see failed relationships is because people aren't honest in their communication. They're trying to dance around you going and getting your hair done, your nails done, and trying to look all cute and sending a representation of who you are instead of just being your genuine, authentic self and saying, listen, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. I get so many couples where one person loves physical touch. They like kissing, they like intimacy, and they end up with somebody who is not like that. And they've spent 6 months to a year before they finally realize, what do you mean you don't like to kiss? I love to kiss. How are we going to make this thing work out?
Right.
So you got to have those conversations early on. Yeah.
You know what, Dr. Adrian, I was thinking about my parents and were my first role models,
Yeah.
right? And so my parents were not touchers. I could count on one hand the times I ever saw them kiss or touch, and I always wanted it, but that's just wasn't it. But I happened to marry a man who was a touchy-feely. And he taught me how to be that.
Yeah.
He really did, because I just, when you model what you've been
Absolutely.
given,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
so because both of us made a decision very early in our marriage that the buck stops with us. We couldn't blame parents.
That's right.
That we had to establish what is it going to be for us, not what our parents did. And so we've evolved, and now. That I evolved. Even my friends, when I took them to meet my husband, I brought them to meet them. They said, "Oh God, it's touchy-feely all the time." Well, now that's what they say about us, because I love the holding of hands. I do. I just enjoy every
So y'all
aspect
hold hands
of it.
all the time when you go
We do.
out?
We do all the time.
But
So
I
do you hug
had a
him when-
similar
We do
story.
too.
So when he comes to the door, do you hug him? You mean like, hey, baby? Do you do that?
Let me see. I have to think about
do.
it. But I'll tell you
Oh
this:
my
what
God.
I can handle.
Yeah.
It's
forget
every
all the
morning.
time.
Every morning, my husband,
I do.
when he gets up, he has this little ritual. He'll go to the restroom and he comes out and kiss me
That's
every
so
morning.
sweet.
And that's Jay and I. We don't leave without
Yeah.
acknowledging.
Yeah.
But your story is I'm similar. It's because I had parents, working parents there, but I didn't see the affection. I didn't see the intimacy.
Yeah.
So when I finally got one that I wanted to have a true relationship with, then he didn't feel that in me. And I said the same thing to him. Well, if you teach me
Yeah.
how you want me to love you, I promise you, I'm gonna be the best lover
Come on.
that you'll ever
Quiet
have.
storm. Come on, quiet
But you
storm.
have to start by knowing yourself, and so many people don't know
know
themselves.
that, and I didn't know it.
They're not in touch with themselves.
Yeah, I didn't know it,
Yeah.
and he was saying for you to be so giving and so nice, and he said you the coldest person.
Oh, whoa. Yes.
I'm not cold.
Not cold, guarded,
not cold-hearted,
guarded,
but
Yes.
like I
just guarded.
Just yes,
yes.
but I didn't know any
Protecting
different.
yourself.
You know, and then when we had that open and honest conversation,
Yes.
then
But I'm
you
the
let the
same
guard
way.
down. You can be vulnerable.
What?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
the
yeah.
same way too, because I grew up. My parents, were not. My mom. She's gonna see this later and say, "I tell you," but I didn't grow up with a whole bunch of warm and fuzzy, touchy feely either. And so, I'm not good at it. I have to practice. I have to remember. Oh, he's coming through the door. Go hug him.
I hope he don't listen to this.
But at the core of who I am, he knows that I love him.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but I have to practice because
Yeah.
that's not who I am naturally.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I haven't seen you in a while, like, hey girl, or if I had seen, but I just saw him last night, he just, but he's all deep. Y'all know my husband, he's all deep. I could have ran into something on my way home and not made it back to you. The last thing I remember, so I had to get back.
So he's telling you that his love language needs some attention. It's not just some words of affirmation. He needs some physical
But how
touch.
do you do that when you're not a natural?
Are you ready for this answer?
Oh boy!
Are you ready for this answer?
Give it to me.
So my formula for relationships is very simple. When everybody puts the other person's
The first.
needs before their
Yes.
own, everybody's needs get met.
That's
yeah,
right.
and that's why I
So
practice.
it's not even about you saying
Yes.
I've got to remember to. It will become natural
Natural
to
to
you
you.
Yes.
if you are focused on what it is he needs, not what you need.
I love it.
And see, I can understand what Pastor
I asked you
Eve-
if you were ready for that answer.
I can understand what she's saying because, as I think Vicky was saying as well, it's when we grow up, it's what we saw. And I'm the same way with my husband too.
Yeah.
We didn't see that love and affection in our parents, so we kind of grew up like that. But we have so many of those other languages. But what I do know, what works for us, is that quality time. He wants me to be intentional about that time and that it is for him, that the attention is on him and it's not the cell phone. I don't want to hear about some deal you got going on or some meeting you have to go to. But I love that time because, that's when we really get down. So I don't got to have you kissing on me and touching on me all day long because when that quality time comes, it's...
Let me tell
I
you
love
an
it.
easy formula for this because it's real simple.
Okay.
So Joyce has one child. I've got 4. I don't know if you all have multiple
have
children.
one.
I have
Okay,
3.
so you have one. So I'm going to give you all a little grace, just this much, just this much.
this little-
But in terms of when you have multiple children, you have to give to them different love because they're different.
Yes, I
It's
do. I
the
have
same thing with your spouse. And so you don't get to just not gift to him the love that he needs because you're not thinking about it. You got to think about his needs just like you would your children's needs.
Can I ask you a question, Dr. Adrian? Because you mentioned that you were married before.
Yes.
29.5.
29.5.
I'm going to remember that.
29.5.
And would you say that in that relationship, you understood and your spouse at that time understood the love languages, or did you evolve and become this informed, empowered woman in this relationship so you're a better version of yourself at this season of your life?
You asked a whole lot of questions. And so here's the thing. I was married to someone who was suffering from a mental illness. I was married to a narcissist, but I did not realize that. I thought it was arrogance. I thought it was conceit. And so we are all a product of our upbringing and experiences. And so I was raised Catholic, and I was raised to pray and stay. And so as a result of that, there were some behaviors that were toxic that I just kept praying about because that's how I was conditioned. And even having some conversations with a therapist or my father, my grandmother, I was still being encouraged to remember my covenant with God. So even when there were times when I knew what I was dealing with was toxic and unhealthy, I continued to stay in it. But I had to have my own process for growth. And so being a therapist, I've always had a therapist. And I always tell folks, if you got a therapist that don't have a therapist, you need to run, go get you another one. Okay, don't stay with that one, go get you another one. And so through my own journey, I knew that what I was in was unhealthy and that it was time specific. But I wasn't willing to have conversations with everybody because, you know, a lot of times, y'all, when you go and you talk to other people, they give their opinions based on who they are, not based on who you are. And so that wasn't what I needed. I knew what I was doing. I knew when I was going to pull the trigger and what I was going to do. And so what I did was, as a part of my process, I started praying for my next husband. Now, I know you might not think that that's very favorable, but I did because I didn't pray for the first one. We were young. We were 19 years old when we got together. But I started praying for my future husband while I still had one. I would tell y'all what I say, but since we on this podcast, I probably can't tell y'all what I really say. But I started praying for him because that was a part of my growth process. And I wanted to evolve into the wife that I knew that I could be. Because I hadn't always been that with him because it was such an unhealthy situation. It was so toxic that a lot of times I knew I was not being the best wife, but I was being the best wife I could be in that situation. But I had a desire for my next situation to be better and to be more like my mother as a wife. So I started praying about that thing. And
Okay.
and
Yeah,
God
I'm
has
just
sent
a-
an amazing God-fearing man
I love it.
into my life.
And so you're able to use his love languages at home, you know.
Listen,
She get ready to go there. She get ready to go there.
when I tell you, it's real good. We just
Hello.
say it's real
Okay,
good.
I heard something, so you can see if this is either you tell me that's a bunch of baloney or what. I heard the first time you married, and I've been blessed to be married once. Thank you, Lord. And but the first time it is for love.
Oh.
This is what I was told by people who have been married several times. But the second or subsequent time, it is for what do you bring to the table? It is more for security. In other words, like Tina said, what love got to do with it. But not that you give up it, but your shift is different. What would you say to that?
So in my case, I had a list. When I talk about those non-negotiables, that's the stuff that you won't tolerate.
Right.
Not a pet peeve, just something that gets on your nerves. So I knew what my non-negotiables were. At the top of my list was God-fearing man. Because I didn't have that inside of my relationship. And a man who had a relationship with God was going to take care of everything else that was on my list. And so that was where I focused and I prayed for. And our story is a little different. So I dated my ex during college. He was the only person I dated. But I had one crush. It was the person I'm with now. And literally, I had never spoken to him ever. It is. Ooh, it is.
Another show.
It's juicy.
But I had never spoken to him on campus because he was everybody's crush. Big time football player, fine model, just, you know. So I never talked to him. But I would stare at him. And the only person that knew was my best friend. And so a few years back, you know, I asked some people about him, but I kind of dropped him in there with Barney Rubble and Fred Flintstone. And, you know, and everybody was like, well, I think he's married with some kids. I didn't look for him. And then his stuff started popping up in my timeline on Facebook. And I later discovered that meant he had been on my page.
Yeah, that's how them cookies do.
And so I sent a message and said, "You seem like an amazing father." I had no idea whether he was, still married or whatever. I said, "Amazing father." My grandma said, "Give folk their flowers while they're here, blah, blah, blah. And oh, by the way, I had the biggest crush on you." He hit me back, and it's been a year.
Wow.
But let me ask you something, because I know Vicky said the first time it's for love and the second time security. Now, would that be a certain age? Because I've been married twice. And I would say my first time, it might have been infatuation, may not have been love. Maybe I didn't understand. Maybe I thought it was love. Yeah. But the second time around, I think that's love. That was love, because it was love at first sight. If anybody believes in that, I truly do. But it truly was love at first sight. This was a fairy tale story, I tell you.
When he and I talked the very first time when he called me, first of all, we had never spoken. So the first thing I said was, "You sound like this and look like this." That was the first thing I said when he said hello. But after that very first conversation, I ended and I said, "He would be easy to love." And I knew, and I said, falling in love is accidental. When you fall, you tripping, you stumbling. And so at this age, I already knew I'm not falling in love with anybody. I'm going to be intentional about who I give my love to.
Oh, that's good.
Because that's being grown.
That's wrong.
Wow.
This is the grown folks table.
This is the
Grown
grown folks
folks
table.
And we can carry this conversation on for hours, but we do have to come to an end with it. So we want the final word to come from you, for people to understand the importance of knowing the love language prior to going into the relationship. What would your final thought be on that?
Yeah, it's important that people understand that in a relationship, it takes two people to make it succeed and two people for it to fail. Maybe not at the same time. And so if you want a successful relationship, it's about understanding the needs of your partner. And when everybody understands, and not only understands, puts that other person's needs before their own, everybody's needs get met. So you can't just go into a relationship loving the way that you are. You've got to know how the other person that you love needs to be loved.
Wow. Y'all got that.
I'm
just
going to
just
be
in
a
love.
groupie. I'm going to be a stalker because, Dr. Adrian, I'm a hopeless romantic.
I am too.
Me too.
Read every Harlequin romance.
Me too.
And, that's just my problem. But I happened to marry a romantic man. I just did. And taught me things about how love is. And so you have inspired me. I mean it, because you've inspired me. I have a wonderful relationship with my husband, but I know so many women that needed to hear what you are saying right now, to make themselves a priority, to understand what their needs are, because you got to take care of yourself before you can fully engage in someone else. You got to know who you are, right? So I'm inspired today by your sharing, and you can't come back enough for me.
And that's why I saw the need to create a show centered around her on the station in which I manage, is because of that. Is because of even what we've gone through into finding love and understanding who we are, to know that there are men and women who have those kinds of struggles, and we need a Dr. Adrian.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
having
coming.
me.
Thank you. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation that we've had at the Grown Folks Table. Definitely join us every Thursday. You will get this kind of conversation, meaningful conversation that we hope that you can take away, and so that your life will be better and your life will improve. You can follow us on all platforms where you can find your podcast, but definitely lock in and subscribe to the Grown Folks Table. We'll see you next time.